Like and subscribe in the next 5 seconds to receive a week of good luck, so like and subscribe. r/AskReddt. Ex-boyfriends/girlfriends who have walked in on their partner cheating. What was your reaction? I have a good one. I hope the assholes see this. He had just moved 1,300 miles to be with me in my hometown after a rough start and my large move back home. I was living with a mutual friend who took the plunge with me to go to grad school. It was 2 weeks to the day of his move. He was celebrating getting his first big boy job out of college, while I was working hard to make a name for myself at the company I worked for. We were supposed to have date night, but the roommate invited himself before I got home from work and the boyfriend didn't object. I was tired. It was Friday after another grueling week since I had just been promoted. I told them to go and have boys night. I wasn't happy, he wasn't happy, and the roommate was oblivious to the entire situation. For the 2 weeks my boyfriend was there, he spent day and night with the roommate drinking and talking about whatever and playing video games while I worked. I'd get home and the boyfriend would be with the roommate and barely acknowledge my presence. They go out and I send the boyfriend a text letting him know what was up, because while at home the roommate wouldn't leave our side so we could discuss. Boyfriend gets pissed I didn't say anything before he left. He proceeds to get hammered along with the roommate. Story goes that on the walk home they decided they wanted to do the MDMA boyfriend brought from home. I didn't know he had it. Roommate was seeing a stripper he met one night during drunken escapes. She gets invited. I'm asleep in bed with our beautiful dog and have no idea this is happening. I wake up at about 2 AM to loud dubstep in my living room. Instantly I'm hit with sharp pains because I know my boyfriend, so I know what he's up to. I walk to the living room and he's under his special blanket with the stripper. I grab my cigarettes and proceed to bolt. Roommate stops me and asks me to just smoke with him on the patio. I do. I tell him I know they're high and I know what is going on. He plays dumb. We finish and I return to my room and toss and turn. Hours later the boyfriend tried to join. I ask him calmly why he thinks that is appropriate for him to be getting into my bed after that display. He plays dumb. Now I let them play dumb because I want to play dumb. 2 weeks is all it took for him to shatter my heart after 5 months long distance and 2 years of struggle before that. He promised with a change of scenery and not knowing anyone that he'd be loyal and dedicated. I was dumb to believe he would change the need for female attention just for the chance to be with me. A month goes by and I get a text from the stripper who is in the roommate's room while the roommate is at the bar with friends. Everyone has treated me like an outsider for the month. She wants to talk. She comes in and tells all. Boyfriend walks in during and very quickly leaves. When she's through I decided I needed to talk to him to compare stories. They match. He swears it was an inebriated mistake. Was sleeping with my friend at the beginning of our relationship for 3 months a mistake too? I tried for a year after. I went off the deep end. Now he's living in my hometown in our apartment with his new girlfriend who moved in the day I moved out. And the roommate has a kid with the stripper. I'm back in the town we started in and trying to piece my life together. Fuck you Tim Pat. You just wanted Portland, not me. Second and last guy I dated seriously was a pet doctor. He was young and establishing his practice, had practically no staff except for his vet tech who was a married woman. I'm an animal freak and good with people, computers, so I helped him out for an hour or two sometimes around my other job. He was great vet and I wanted him to make it. I cared about him, thought there might be something real happening there. He said so. Told me he loved me in fact. I come in one morning and I hear giggles. He's on the examining table with the vet tech and they are playing human doctor. He saw me, went all oh and tried to button up, but it was over. I turned around, walked out and never talked to him again. Didn't answer his calls, his notes on my door, nothing. Cut him dead. He was frantic. He knew what he had lost and he wasn't happy about it. He sent me gifts, tried everything to get me to talk to him. Nope. It was fortunate that we had not actually slept together at that point. We'd been talking a lot about it and I'd just gotten on birth control again. I wanted him to get tested for STDs before we went there. He'd had a lot more partners than he'd agreed, had a nap to do, that week actually. We probably would have gone to bed very soon, but I'm ever so glad now that we hadn't. He had told me though, that we were exclusive in anticipation of what was likely to be us involved that way soon. I had no reason to expect him to be more interested in being with me soon than with boning his much married VT. Dodged a bullet, not sorry either. I'm not too flexible on the infidelity thing. Once a man tells me I'm his only GF, and that he loves me, I expect the courtesy of him keeping his pants zipped if he wants to be with me. I don't cheat, ever. The guy could be fucking Sebastian Stan, current mega crush, and I would still dump his ass as soon as possible for doing that to me, even if doing so broke my heart. A guy wants to bone others, okay, I get it. Some people are not naturally monogamous. He needs to be honest and not lead me on. You leave before you fuck someone else. That's the polite thing to do. You don't risk your partner's health or cause them undue heartache. That's just lazy and inconsiderate. Some people, they just don't get that they can't have both. I really don't like people like that who lie and lead on genuinely monogamous people. It's one thing to not be and admit that, give someone like me a choice. It's another to hide, lie and cheat knowing the other person really cares and will be devastated when they find out you are cheating. It was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. My ex got me a job at a grocery store, moved on to a way better job about 4 months after me, and my ex split. We had been together almost a year when I got the job. I had realized about 6 months into the relationship that I wasn't happy, but due to many factors, I felt compelled to commit to the relationship. That maybe it was all my fault we weren't happy. Anyways, after a couple of months working there, I became completely enamored with one of my customers. Just the small weekly interactions we had each day made my feelings for him grow stronger. Which sucked because I felt so guilty because I was trying to make things okay with my then boyfriend. Fast forward to my 21st birthday, where a huge group went camping on the beach. He got drunk and cheated on me with a mutual coworker in our tent. Long story short, I break up with him shortly after. I'm heartbroken, totally disillusioned with love. One night I'm at the bar and get a wild hair to message the customer previously mentioned to have a drink. He lived close. One thing led to another, and it ended up that my boyfriend cheating on me allowed me to be with the love of my life going on 2 years now with plans to marry when I graduate college. Life can be so funny sometimes. Hopefully this is the answer y'all are looking for. I was full drunk, going through a bad patch. Told her I was on my way to her house. I'll let her know numerous times I'm on my way to hers. I knew something was up. I just had that feeling in my gut. I walked in through the back door, up the stairs, and into the room. She was still clothed on top of this guy who I half knew. He always sleazed over her anytime we were in the pubs and clubs of my local town. I proceeded to knock the fuck out of him, raining down with punch after punch, each one with serious bad intentions. It was chaos, complete anarchy. In the crossfire she claims to have got caught with a few punches herself. I honestly never ever intentionally laid a finger on her, but it was absolute madness. So it is possible. It lasted around 30-45 seconds, but felt like an eternity. I'll let him up. He ran down the stairs covered in blood, while she sat on the edge of the bed crying. I paced back and forth around the room, then left the house on tears. Do I regret it? Yes. If I could go back and change my actions, I would. I reacted in the heat of the moment, and I was drunk. To be honest, he is lucky I didn't kill him, and I'm not writing this from a prison cell. In a sober mind I probably have reacted a lot better, but I didn't. I'm not proud of any of it. He didn't press charges for assault, although he easily could have. You can only learn from your mistakes, people. You live and learn. I ghosted her. In a big way. I left on a Wednesday afternoon to go out of town for work until Friday night. She wasn't working that day, so I kissed her goodbye and left, figuring that she'd probably crash at my place while I was gone. Once I got on the road I realized I left my paint meter. I was going to an auto auction in PA at the house, so I turned around and went back to grab it. I guess I was gone an hour. Anyhow I get home and there's a strange car in the driveway. I enter the house quietly, grab the paint meter that I had left by the door, hear her clearly fucking some guy. Okay, it's on. I walk outside, snap a pic of his car in my driveway and leave. I sneak back out, call a friend of mine who works construction. He gets me in touch with his friend the locksmith. The next morning, after she leaves for work, the locks are changed. That night I get a panicked phone call, many of them. I ignore them. The next morning I text her a pic of his car, told her the locks were changed and to not bother calling me or texting me as she was now blocked. It makes you lose faith in relationships and the whole idea of love. Because no matter how attentive, attractive, charming, kind, or successful you are, there is something you will never be, different. And sometimes different is all they want. Been single for a long time due to this, well, partially I guess. Lots of factors go into it. Reminds me of this post I saw a while back. Went like this. A lot of people ask me what my biggest fear is, or what scares me most. And I know they expect an answer like heights, or closed spaces, or people dressed like animals. But how do I tell them that when I was 17 I took a class called Relationships for Life and I learned that most people fall out of love for the same reasons they fell in it. That their lover's once endearing stubbornness has now become refusal to compromise, and their one-track mind is now immaturity and their bad habits that you once adored is now money down the drain. Their spontaneity becomes reckless and irresponsible, and their feet up on your dash is no longer sexy, just another distraction in your busy life. Nothing saddens and scares me like the thought that I can become ugly to someone who once thought all the stars were in my eyes. Gets me every fucking time. I've been there, and I found those words when I was at my absolute lowest point. I showed it to my best friend, and he found something else that author wrote. I never expected this to be my most popular poem out of the hundreds I've written. I was extremely bitter and sad when I wrote this, and I left out the most beautiful part of that class. After my teacher introduced us to this theory, she asked us, is love a feeling? Or is it a choice? We were all a bunch of teenagers. Naturally we said it was a feeling. She said that if we clung to that belief, we'd never have a lasting relationship of any sort. She made us interview a dozen adults who were or had been married, and we asked them about their marriages and why it lasted or why it failed. At the end, I asked every single person if love was an emotion or a choice. Everybody said that it was a choice. It was a conscious commitment. It was something you choose to make work every day with a person who has chosen the same thing. They all said that at one point in their marriage, the feeling of love had vanished or faded, and they weren't happy. They said feelings are always changing, and you cannot build something that will last on such a shaky foundation. The married one said that when things were bad, they chose to open the communication, chose to identify what broke and how to fix it, and chose to recreate something worth falling in love with. The divorced one said they chose to walk away. Ever since that class, since that project, I never looked at relationships the same way. I understood why arranged marriages were successful. I discovered the difference in feelings and commitments. I've never gone for the person who makes my heart flutter or my head spin. I've chosen the people who were committed to choosing me, dedicated to finding something to adore even on the ugliest days. I no longer fear the day someone who swore I was their universe can no longer see the stars in my eyes, as long as they still choose to look until they find them again. It changed my perspective and helped me find some strength. I was having a lot of complications when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter and had extreme pain one day, so I came home early from work. When I get home I see two purses that I knew weren't mine sitting on the stand. I head to my room to see if my then boyfriend could explain the purses. I'm hearing noises coming from our room and I know exactly what those sounds were. I opened the door to peek in, and he's having a threesome. I close the door and just go back into the living room. I was shocked. I was supposed to be on bed rest, but I was the only one who had a job, so I was going to school and working while he got to stay home all day. I was livid, but what was scary is that I was so furious that I remained calm. I went into the living room, sat on the couch, and waited for them to come out. When they finally did, I asked them if they had fun. Told them they needed to get out of my apartment. He tried to talk to me, but I told him he needed to get out. I calmly packed off of his stuff up, had a friend come over because I couldn't do heavy lifting being 7 months pregnant, and dropped his stuff off at his parents' house that night. It's still shocking to me that I remained so calm being that angry. I was out for a friend's birthday and BF was out with his friends, but supposed to meet up with us. We were texting, but his replies got drunker until he just stopped replying. So last call happens, and I go back with my friend to her place, which was just down the street from my boyfriend's apartment. I'm drunk and I know he's drunk, so I decide to head to his place so I can surprise him and get laid. Funny story. I got surprised because he was getting laid. I straight walked in on him with some chick naked on top of him. There was lots of yelling, and he tried to blame it on me. Fuck that. I will never forget the sight of him naked in the kitchen trying to hide his junk while telling me I made him cheat. He also tried to tell me he couldn't get it up, so he never really had sex with her. All in all, it was a really awful experience, and it made me incredibly insecure for the next few years. Also jealous. It really fucked with my next few relationships. So, it wasn't a big love story obviously, but it was pretty fun. This pretty Asian chick and me had been dating for 3 weeks now, and we were supposed to meet in town for our 5th date. But, a few hours before, she cancelled saying she was very sick, maybe going to the hospital, but that I didn't need to worry. I still told her I was worried, and to keep me informed, that I'd gladly go with her, but she told me not to. She was adamant. Well, I was already downtown anyway, so I decided to go shopping, check some stores, get a hot cocoa and some cookies. Few hours later, I'm on my way back home waiting for a tramway when she shows up, and she seems well, and she's with her friends. So I walk up to her and say that I'm glad she's feeling better and maybe she could introduce me to her friends. She blushes really hard and is panicking and takes me away, and she doesn't have the time to say anything when this guy comes up and says, "Who are you?" He looks to her and says, "Who is he?" He's obviously jealous, but in a way that he's suspicious that she's cheating on him. Before she says anything, I tell him, "Nice to meet you, I'm Nix, and you, nice to meet you too, I'm Dennis." So Dennis is what I believed was my girlfriend's boyfriend. I leave them both to it and tell the girl never to call me again or text me. Just plain and simple. I tell her that I won't answer any of her calls and text. Seems cheesy now, but I couldn't come up with anything better. I remember it was rainy, and then there was a big scene at the tramway stop between them both. People were watching. I felt stupid making my exit because I couldn't just sit next to them and wait for my train after I had said that, so I decided to walk to the nearest tramway stop on the same line. At home in the evening, I still received a text from her saying exactly word for word, "Are you mad?" Couldn't help but burst out laughing. Between that and the hospital excuse, I had no regrets really. This actually happened years ago to my so with his ex-wife, but so worth telling. We refer to this as the trunk boy incident. My so, we'll call him Tom, was married with 2 small children, working his ass off to support his young family. They were both early 20s. She'd had an affair before, saying that she was lonely because they didn't go out much. Remember, he was working his ass off, very long hours. He forgave her and made an effort to work less / take her out to play pool / go dancing, etc. He had to work Thanksgiving, and for whatever reason, needed to swap out the car he was driving with the one that was sitting at home in the driveway. It was late, so he just went home and switched cars without bothering to wake her and the kids. He only worked about a mile from the house and hadn't gotten very far when he hit a bump and felt something rolling in the trunk. He pulled over into a parking lot to investigate, opened the trunk, and lo and behold, curled up in a ball pretending to be asleep was the guy she'd had the affair with. Tom couldn't believe his fucking eyes. He'd played pool with this guy on one of the nights he'd taken his wife out. He closed the trunk and had an internal debate over whether to back into a telephone pole or perhaps drive the car into a lake. Concluded that this dude wasn't worth going to prison for, opened the trunk and told him to get out. Guy blearily got out and walked off. Tom went home, woke wife up and coldly relayed what had just happened and said we are through. Divorced her at a sap. Her loss, my gain. If there was a trophy for best husband ever, he'd have it on the mantle. This guy's golden. We've been married 12 years now, and I tell him every day how goddamn lucky I'm to have him. Edit. Trunk boy and floozy wife had gotten drunk, and since he had nowhere to stay that night, they came up with the brilliant idea of him sleeping in the trunk and leaving before Tom got home. I had been married for 11 years and 11 months ago I found out that my now ex-husband was cheating. I found out on our son's 8-year birthday. I found out by reading it on Reddit. I had never been on Reddit before, and he's an online man. We met online ourselves. Anyhow, I basically found out his username and read a post he had put saying he found the girl he's been looking for blah blah blah. Then I found out that he's a sugar daddy and had been spending our money on all these online sluts. I had never even heard of a sugar baby before that day. As soon as I found out I confronted him, and of course the lies started and never stopped until today. He slept with prostitutes, took money of me to pay these girls and lied so much, but I had evidence, and then he tried to blame me and say it's my fault he acted this way. Obviously I can't trust a soul now, not even my own parents. This guy wasn't just a husband, he was my best friend for 11 years. I'm currently on antidepressants and weekly therapy just trying to recover and make sense of it all. Absolutely by far the worst experience I have ever been through, and we have 2 amazing kids, an 8 and 5-year-old boy, so still have to co-parent and deal with the low cheap piece of nasty shit. Went to the bar with my ex-boyfriend. The bar was conveniently right below our apartment. After about 3 rounds of 2-for-1s I had to pee something fierce, and when I realized how cramped the ladies' room was I decided to just run upstairs to my apartment to piss instead. Walked in on him, naked as the day he was born, cock in his hand as he'd just pulled it out of this bar bitch with her legs up on his bed. This happens after I'd helped him overcome his heroin/meth addiction for the past 6 months, and showed him nothing but compassion and understanding. I moved out, the bitch moved in, and she's now the love of his life. Good riddance, arsehole. Edit. My immediate reaction was fuck you, slamming the door and sobbing on my best friend's couch that night. He didn't remember it the next morning, conveniently. I dated a pretty girl for 3 months from my college classes. One night I had to attend a committee party for my society, and I told her I'd be late back to the dorm, so I gave her my room card and left to go to the event, which was about 20 minutes away from campus. At around 8 PM, I left early because truth be told, I wanted to go back and fuck my girlfriend, so I left 2 hours before the event ended. So I'm walking towards my dorm block and I remember I left my phone next to my bed, so naturally I walked over to the dorm reception and asked for a spare room card so I could open the first set of doors and knock on the second. 4 single rooms within a bigger living room for each dormitory. So I unlock the entrance door, and as I'm walking towards my door, I can hear faint moaning. I remember my throat immediately clenched and my mouth went dry because I knew everyone in my dorm quite well, and I knew that they were single. So the predicament arose when I was left with the choice of walking towards my door, where the moaning sounds came from, or leaving the dorm. I chose the latter, but maybe halfway down the corridor, I felt really fucking angry, and I walked back to my dorm and knocked on the door. The moaning obviously stopped immediately, and a minute later, my ex-girlfriend comes out crying saying that she regretted everything and that I shouldn't hurt the guy since it was her fault. I pushed past her and went straight for the guy who was already fully dressed. pushing him into the wall, and just as I was about to hit him in the face, I told them both to get the fuck out. I've had trust issues ever since. Staying in that dorm for the semester also fucked my grades up. Finally, a question that I can unload. I had come home from working out of town, and when I pulled up to the driveway there was an unfamiliar car parked in what would normally be where I parked. I didn't think much of it and thought it might be my ex-wife's sister. So I parked right behind it. I walked in through the door, checked the mail, and yelled that I was home. The bedroom door slammed shut, and I still didn't think too much about it as it was a few weeks before Christmas and thought they were wrapping presents. After a few minutes I finally walked back to the bedroom and knocked on the door. My ex-wife yelled back and said, "Just a minute." After a few moments I knocked and again was greeted with "just a minute," but this time there was a tone in her voice that made me believe something was up. I quickly reached up and grabbed the emergency key and unlocked the door. There was my ex-wife half naked and the French doors leading to outside were wide open. I immediately started to interrogate her, asking her who is he, what's his name. She wouldn't give it up. I continued on asking and probing over and over. She finally gave me his first name and refused to give me his last name. So I immediately got on the phone with a close work friend of hers and asked her friend if she knew his last name and what street did he live on. After obtaining this information I looked up his information and got his home phone number. I called the number and told his wife, now ex-wife, what just happened. She said it couldn't be true. I told her that if she wanted the license plate number from his car, I would give it to her. At that time she finally realized that what I was saying was true, and she asked for my phone number and said she would call me in the next day or two. After I hung up the call, I gathered up his belongings, shoes, and shirt, put them on top of his car, moved my car, I had him blocked in, and yelled out into the darkness of night and told him by name to get the F***ck out of here. About 10 minutes later I heard his car start up and he left. My 25th birthday present to myself was cutting him loose. I had suspected for a while that he had been cheating, but had never been able to prove it. We had a nasty confrontation about his texting another girl, but he turned the situation back on me and made me feel guilty for even suspecting him. Dude was a master manipulator. When I was on my own and reanalyzed the situation, I realized what he did and decided that to prevent that kind of manipulation again, the next time I confronted him, it would be with solid evidence. So I start putting out feelers among our mutual friends, and one day one of them contacts me and says he has a recording of him bragging about his sexcapades. His condition for passing it on to me was that my ex could never know how I got my info. By happy coincidence, this dear friend finally relinquishes the recording on my birthday, and I decide, even though I can't use the recording to confront my ex directly, I cannot continue even one more day in this situation. So I call him. The bastard had not even phoned to wish me happy birthday by this point, and tell him I have irrefutable evidence that he has been cheating on me, and that if he wants to find out how I know, he has to give me the name of the girl he cheated on me with. He didn't know that I knew the girl's name already, so he ums and ahs for a while and finally confesses, but gives me a different girl's name and details about when it happened. So by this point I know of at least 2 girls he cheated on me with. After we broke up, even more emerged from the woodwork. I'll never know how many times he was unfaithful in the course of our 4-year relationship. Marched myself straight to a clinic for STD tests the next day. What fun. So I was going out with this girl, and it was back in high school, so it isn't a big deal now, but it seemed like it was back then. Everything was fine on Friday when I went home for the weekend, and on Monday, she's acting incredibly nervous. I picked up on it, but I had no idea what was up with her. Later in the day, I was heading from one class to another and turned a corner to see her holding hands with some dude. She leans in and gives him a kiss before he leaves to go to whatever class he was going to. She turned around, saw me, knew I saw her, and then starts trying to say she's sorry, but that she has feelings for him. Like that's supposed to mean something to me. I tell her not to touch me, tell her she's a whore, and she runs to the nearest bathroom crying. I don't give a fuck, and I go to class. She tried to talk to me about it during break, but I was in no mood. One of my friends, also a girl, steps in and tells this girl that she's going to get the shit kicked out of her if she doesn't just leave. Clearly I'm done with her. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.